And now we'll kind of get to the next presenter, which I believe is Mr. Alan Wilcox, our guest for the day.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So I've been asked to talk about the BC to Dataverse integration the capability that comes with Business Central. So let me share my screen. Can you all see that okay?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm not going to do a comparison between a simple and an easy. I don't think. I'll just talk through what we're doing. But this is the Dataverse, right here. It's the Dataverse side, and this is the Business Central side, and these arrows indicate the data that needs to move between them. The red is a customization that we need to do to meet the need for unleashing meters. So let's look at products and service. So the product and service after the initial synchronization, Dataverse will be the side of the integration that will quote unquote own or be the system of record, I guess, for the product or service, and that data will be sent over to the item table in Business Central. So if we go through any examples and so forth, we'll use product and service and item for that. So this is Business Central, and we have JourneyTEAM has been developing, mostly Brett has been developing an app that we can install into Business Central that helps manage the integration, helps set it up, and then augments some of the capability and functionality of it. And that's this Dataverse integration menu. So that's when you install the app, you can get that menu in BC. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the initial setup. When you set up the connection between BC and the Dataverse, you have to have, it's going to install in the CRM environment a couple of solutions. And this is how you do that. You just come in here, put in your URL for the CRM, click enable, log in with credentials that have CRM admin so they can actually install a solution. And then it will go and install the solution for you in the Power Platform. And there's two of them that you need to install. One was for sales, and one's for the rest of the CRM apps.
Just as a quick warning, so once he did that, I was no longer able to promote my solutions to test because there were pieces missing. So I had to get Alan to hook up another environment to my test. And then he went through this process again to push those solutions into test.
Yeah, so that's a good point.
He doesn't have a copy of the files that we could import ourselves.
Yeah, the solutions that are installed, there's 2 or 3 of them, and they are managed solutions published by Microsoft. And so when you do a promotion from a lower environment, it won't pull those along with it. So you have to actually install the solution in the environments. And if you don't, then you'll run into an error. And so I've gotten in the way of a couple of folks trying to do code promotions because I've added this to their environment. So just keep that in mind. But once you add that, then the way you set up the integration is you come to this integration table mappings, and here's the name of the integration mapping. And here's the table in BC, and the integration table is the Dataverse table. So if we're looking at item and product, in BC it's item, in the Dataverse it's CRM product. If you can open this up and look at, here are the options, some of the options that you can set. So just basically general information. You can make these dependent on other integrations. So product obviously would need to be dependent on the unit of measure. integration.
Alan, can I interrupt with a question?
Sure, please do. If you have questions, just interrupt me.
When you install the Dataverse solution into Business Central, does that affect any of the existing extensions that have already been deployed to that environment?
No, it shouldn't. It doesn't. When you install it, I'll show you what it looks like. I didn't like that. Never mind. I won't show you. But you just upload it and install it, and it just installs itself with the rest of them. And when you develop something in Business Central, you have to give it unique IDs. And so that's how you prevent it from colliding with other solutions that have been uploaded into PC.
Thanks.
So the integration table, again, this is the CRM side, and for products, we can filter what we want to bring over. So we only want to bring products that have a product type sales inventory that are active and that belong to this customer, or excuse me, this company. And the BC is company, and in CRM, it's a business unit. So that's a simple way of how you can filter it. And then you also specify, since it will do, the integration will do what record will modify, or excuse me, the integration will bring over records that have been modified since the last time it ran. And so you give it a field in the integration table, and that one for the product, CRM product, is modified on. And then on the synchronization, you can give it some parameters here. So we want to come from the integration table or from CRM, and we want to create a new one if it can't find it. So that's what that one does. And if it can't find it, there's some other parameters here that I don't think we want to get into right now. But here's the last time, the date of the last record it moved over, the modified date. So it synchronized from the integration table modified on filter, which is this column right here. That was the max, that was the last value in that modified on date that it brought over. So the next time it will run, it will look for anything modified after that date and bring those over, and then it will update that. And then that's for the table level. You can also then, well, you need to map the fields. So in CRM, the product ID is mapped over to the BC number column, and description in BC is mapped to name, unit price, so forth. And then this in BC, we need a posting group for both the general ledger and the inventory, which doesn't exist in CRM. And so we can put in constant values there that will be used to load those fields.
Are any of the mappings there by default?
Yes. Most of these are there by default, and these tables, the only two that I've added, I deleted a few, but I added these last two, and that's to handle this, that's to handle the customization right here, this red, these two red lines and red boxes. So when you install it, it puts out, this whole page is full. I don't remember what I deleted, but there's sales orders that isn't on there, and a few others that it will out of the box, and it will have its own default mappings as well. Did that answer your question okay?
Yes, thanks.
Any other questions so far? The
Suppose-
yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, Alan. So a lot of these mappings, so when this solution is installed, does it just make it accessible in the Dataverse, or does it automatically, I mean, or is it configured?
You're breaking up a little bit, but I think
Oh,
you're
sorry.
asking, what does it do to the Dataverse, essentially?
Yeah. Is it automatically syncing based on these configurations, or just allows us to kind of go hook up a Power Automate flow to expose those tables and hook them up?
Yeah, good question. So one thing it does is it will add tables to the Dataverse to support the integration. And then, yeah, so it does modify the Dataverse and it adds some tables in there. The way it synchronizes is through jobs inside of BC. And here are the jobs that it creates when you install it. And then I created the two for the unposted unposted invoices, these two right here. And this is how it synchronizes them. So for example, if we wanted to come into let's do this. So if this is CRM, so let's look at this communication fundamentals. It's active. Actually, let's look at this.
If
One
it
that
has
I
a
know.
P in it, it's synced over from BC.
Okay.
If it doesn't, it's something we had in UL's environment.
Okay. So let's put in here a description. So this is improved process. We'll just put that in the description. And we'll save that. If we come over here to BC and look at the items,
One thing that solution in CRM does is it gives you a ribbon button to immediately navigate to Business Central as well, that record.
so here's the, is it just the one I modified? Yep. So improved process advanced 1 to 5 days is here. And I probably picked the wrong field to, oh, that's right. The description I'm pulling over from the other description field. So I picked the wrong field to modify. But anyway, so if you inside of CRM, after you install this, then this Dynamics 365 Business Central icon can appear on those areas of the application that are linked. If you click on that, it will open up Business Central and show you inside of Business Central what the corresponding record is that has been integrated between the two systems. So it seems like it's taking its time here. While that's thinking, I'm going to come over here and show you the opposite. So in here, you can look at, in BC, you can go in Dynamics 365 sales, and you can look at the product, and it will open up Dynamics. From BC, it'll open up the Dynamics record and show it to you. So that one, we got an error on that one.
So Alan, can you talk real quick about which system we should load first? Right, like at UL, we had accounts loaded in CRM, but there's an accounts table in BC. Is there a correct order to do that to make sure the linkage established is correct?
There, you can,
Process.
yeah, it's a good question. You can start on either side. And specifically with Unleashing Leaders, I synchronized it both ways. And so if something didn't exist in BC that was in CRM, it created it and vice versa. And so that's why you notice some of those duplicates, right? Because it didn't find it the right way. And so it duplicated that. So you need to be careful, obviously, when you're creating data in a system that you're not creating garbage data. So, but that's what you do. And then you can do an initial load either way. And that would depend on the scenario and what the customer needs. So for example, if your customer has a really good solid customer list inside of CRM, then you would probably want to use that to load BC. But if your products are better and stronger and are going to be managed in BC, then you would probably want to load your products into CRM from BC. And then after the initial load, you can synchronize both ways. So somebody could make a change in either side and that change would propagate.
So if the load in CRM is quite large, this integration, you're essentially using it to migrate into BC the first time, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the limits are on that. That's something that we haven't tested yet. And so I think you're worried about things like
I'm not on either one of those projects, but yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind.
yeah, I don't know. We haven't stressed it yet to see what kind of performance we can expect as far as creating rows in either BC or in Dataverse, but that's on our list to do. I'm excited to figure that out. I'd really like to know if it's better than Kingsway Soft or not as good, or what its limits are. That's a area that we don't quite understand yet.
Hey, Alan, Scott has his hand up, but one more thing to add is one of the BC consultants told me that products should originate in BC because there's extra fields on BC products that if that product synced in from CRM, the data wouldn't be there and it would be a problem for BC.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's true, but I was
Yeah.
told that this morning.
Here's a good example of it. So this product right here, it's missing the general ledger posting and it's missing the inventory posting.
Right, so
And
shouldn't
so-
it be best practice that products are done in BC?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's
Yep.
what I was raising my hand for is, Alan correctly points out that you can do two-way integration. And my response to that would be, Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And
That's a good point, Scott.
I would propose best practice is to talk to them about the system of record. Where does this data live and where should it be updated? And it should only be one, because customers will be like, oh, we'll update it in both. Okay, well, you've just increased your costs because of things like this. All right, if it's coming from CRM to BC, I now have to put a default value on it, and if it's going the other way, I don't care what those values are. So you're going to make me test more. You're going to make me, if they say, hey, money's no object, we want to do it, you can, but you really should. And even if they're doing two-way integration, if at all possible, the recommendation has always been certain fields should only be updated in a particular system. So if they want to update, something on the item in BC, they should not also be updating that in CRM. And that's a good place for field security profile to make it read only in BC or in CRM so that all the updates have to come from BC. And then that way you have just the people who know what they're doing updating things. A good example would be like warehousing and inventory. Generally, that's always going to come from BC. You don't ever want to do that in CRM.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
well, they wanted to go live before BC. So we went live in December, and so I showed the salespeople, a few of them how to do products and price lists. Well, now we're in the quandary of we've got them all in CRM. Thankfully, they don't have a large volume of data, but they do have active records now with these other products. So you have to sort this out. And so it's just important to know, make sure you're communicating closely with the BC people. And my experience has always been ERPs are the system of record for like account data and products, but seems like these days you don't care as much.
But you wouldn't want to load your ERP with all of your contacts.
No, just your customer data though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with Scott 100% that you should pick a system of record for each one and then limit the changes in the other one. It just makes life much more simple. And the integration, if somebody goes in and modifies the same record in BC and in CRM just by happenstance, the integration for that record will fail. Say it won't try to resolve, where if the changes were to the same field, and if so, who's going to win? It doesn't do that. It just fails. Okay, Kevin, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and I apologize. I showed up a couple minutes late, so you might have touched on it. If you did, then I'll go watch the recording. But I think one of the pieces of complexity that I've had here, if you go back to maybe that flow chart, the diagram between CRM and Business Central, is things that are tables in Business Central, but they're just fields inside of CRM. For example, the payment terms.
Right.
And trying to navigate matching those when we need to add custom payment terms, and also having those match, because that integration fails if the payment terms don't match.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And payment terms is a good example of something that I think ought to be the system of record should be the ERP, right? Because that's the payment terms in account really is more informational. That doesn't drive any process or calculations or anything. The payment terms in Business Central, when an invoice is created, it will calculate the due date based on what those payment terms are. And so the payment terms have to be set up not only with a description of what they mean, but there's some other things that need to be set up so it can perform that calculation properly. So if it's net 30 and the invoice date is March 1st, then payment will be due on March 30th. And so it needs to calculate that date. That's a good point.
And so you have there set up manually in both CRM and BC. That's something that's not, if we do new payment terms in BC, that's not going to be pushed to the CRM.
I haven't tried it that direction. It's the out of the box capability pulls the payment terms and the shipping information comes from the account in Dataverse.
Okay.
But I haven't tried that yet. Brett, how do you pronounce his last name? Barabash or something like that? Is that right?
Barabash.
Barabash. Barabash. He's the real expert in this, and he's really good at it. And he's the one that's been developing the JourneyTEAM app to improve it. But these real detailed questions and specifics. If I don't answer your question properly or to your satisfaction, let me know, and we can pull Brett into the conversation.
Got it. Thank you.
For the few I've been on, payment terms is one of those things where it changes so infrequently. This was just a way of saving money. Let's not make it an integration and then have to test it and have to maintain it. You're not going to change your payment terms that often, and so if so, you just got to remember to go over and do it in the other system.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I'm taking too much time here, but I just wanted to mention a couple things. So there are plenty of warts on this, right? It's not a perfect solution. There's some missing capability in there that you'd think that should be there that's not, that requires some BC development. It can be rather tedious to use and frustrating at times, and the documentation is quite lacking in what all those options on the mapping and so forth, what you can do with those. And so those are the things that we're trying to improve with our JourneyTEAM app to make it less tedious, fill some of those functionality gaps that you would think should have been filled by Microsoft, and then help document what each of the components or each of the options in those screens that we looked at, what they do. But if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and if I don't know the answer, I'll get it for you. But any last questions? Mark, you have one?
Yeah, just some regular fields like relationship type says customer in CRM. That's what sends it over to BC. So some things you may not be aware of. So I think at some point we should identify what are the fields that, are integral to the integration, so we don't screw up those values.
Yeah, that's a good good point. And then also the other thing keep in mind is the length of the field in the two systems vary. For example, the tracking number in BC is 30 characters. Well, that's a custom field in CRM, but the field lengths in both systems are not the same. And so keep that in mind too. If you're going to integrate a field over to BC, product ID is one that Mark and I ran into recently, are not the same length. So you could put more data in the product ID field in CRM. If you truncate it, then you run into duplicate products in BC.
Just make sure you're communicating early and often with the BC team if you're doing one of these.
Yeah. Okay, Scott, last question, and I've taken up
another
way too much time.
Okay, another huge problem is that BC uses codes for just about everything. And so like country, which is free-form text in CRM, has to be a 2-character code. So USA fails. US works just fine. And so Jessica found or wrote a PCF that will let us do the 2-character ISO codes for the ones where we're using this. And so that's probably something that you need to look at. As soon as someone says integration with BC, there's all sorts of rules you have to start following. And I don't know that we're capturing that in our estimate of work. So that might be something to look at as, as soon as they say integration, then these are the list of things that absolutely have to be there, and this is how much it'll cost you.
Okay, I'm way over time. Thank you for your time. And again, if you have questions, let me know. If you have ideas on how to improve it, if you've worked with it in the past, let me know. And we're anxious to help JourneyTEAM get better at integrations. And I think this is a piece of it, right? I mean, it's not the only solution that we're going to be using, but it is a piece of it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, standard BC CRM where they just need it's low volume and it's pretty straightforward. This should be the first option that we go and look at to take advantage of Dataverse. Thanks, Alan.
Yes, thanks, Alan.